What we see all across Texas is, you go talk to people and you say, well, hey, what are you guys doing to control wild pigs? And unequivocally, the most common answer that I get is, oh, well, we shoot them every chance we get. And oh yeah, we hunt them all the time. And so the story goes like this, okay? You're out there and you're hunting, but what happens is, you're sitting there and then all of a sudden, here comes a big group of pigs. And a big group of pigs is known as a sounder. A sounder is a matrilineal group, meaning it's a female-based group of wild pigs. They travel around in these groups known as sounders. It's kind of like a herd of buffalo or a flock of geese. But a sounder of wild pigs come out, and you're sitting there with your rifle, or whatever firearm you happen to have at that time. And then maybe even there's a really, really big one. And you have a choice to make. You have a choice of, hey, I've got this tool in my hand. I have a large number of pigs in front of me. Now, I could shoot that animal, but it's not really so much what happens when you shoot that one animal. It's what happens to the rest of the animals after you've shot that animal. The majority of the time, exactly what's going to happen is all of those wild pigs are going to run off. And now they are going to have a greater awareness of human presence. And wild pigs are highly, highly reproductively successful. At 5 to 6 months old, they can conceive a litter of 4 to 6 piglets. The older a sow gets, the research shows, the more offspring she can potentially produce, meaning that a 6-month-old sow can conceive 4 to 6, but maybe a 3 or 4-year-old sow can conceive 8, 9, 10. That one pig that you've shot is not going to do much good as far as reducing populations and reducing numbers and achieving some of the goals that I think a lot of people think are achieved through the recreational sport hunting of wild pigs. So that's the definition for me of recreational sport hunting. You're out there, a big group comes out, or even a smaller group comes out, and you shoot that one, or maybe even you get lucky and you get that second animal. Well, the remainder of those animals are now more educated and more aware of human presence and are more able to avoid that human presence and interaction in the future. Usually, what you want to do anytime you see a big group of pigs is I'll put the rifle down, I'll put the gun down, and I'll say, okay, hey, it's time to implement a larger scale control measure on this property. Now, if you have a dominant boar come out and it's just one pig, or maybe there's just 1 or 2 pigs, well, that could be a good time to implement some recreational sport hunting. However, for the most part, we want to be utilizing measures that are capable of removing the total number of individuals that we're after. And for the most part, the research shows that shooting and hunting of any kind is not going to reduce populations. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to implement our population reduction methods. And the research shows that generally these two population reduction methods are aerial gunning and trapping. So instead of pulling out the Winchester and shooting up a big sounder and maybe getting 1 or 2 animals if you're lucky, let's consider utilizing those other tools. Let's get a big corral trap out there. Let's pre-bait and condition that group to come in over time. Now, this could take a couple of days, a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. But if you can pull and remove that entire sounder, instead of busting them up, pulling one pig out of there and educating them, I think that we're going to have a lot more success as far as reducing wild pigs' numbers and damages across Texas. So that's just something to keep in mind when we talk about the tool of shooting and hunting, because shooting and hunting is a viable tool in wild pig management. However, a lot of folks don't realize that this is generally a tool of pressure. This is generally a tool that you can capitalize on the intelligence of wild pigs and their response to pressure by getting them to abandon areas where they're causing damage. And this has to be done pretty consistently. This has to be done pretty intensively. You start seeing wild pigs running around in the daytime, what happens? Well, that can mean a couple of things. That can mean that the time of year is mild. That can mean that the temperatures are low enough or nice enough that the pigs feel comfortable running around the daytime. It could also mean lack of abatement pressure. You start shooting at them in the daytime, one of the first things that happens is they don't abandon that area. They don't leave. They will very quickly go nocturnal on you. And so in order to achieve our management goal of directing animal movements and forcing wild pigs to abandon areas where they're causing damage, we need to be prepared to implement both daytime and nighttime strategic shooting efforts. All the while keeping in mind that this is usually not going to reduce populations unless you're really good or you have a lot of tools and a lot of buddies out there with you that are getting after them on a very, very consistent basis. And probably the greatest example of how not to reduce populations and to educate pigs to avoid your abatement efforts in the future is to wait until that big sounder of pigs come in, and then you take your shot and you bust up that whole sounder, and it doesn't even matter if you're successful or not. What matters is you did not remove that entire sounder. Strategic shooting forces animals to abandon areas through pressure, through both nighttime and daytime pressure. Recreational sport hunting is going out there and picking the biggest one that you can or the one that you want the most, regardless of how many are present. And this is one of the reasons why there are states in the United States that have actually banned sport hunting for very similar reasons than what I'm describing now. The state of Missouri, for example, has banned sport hunting on its conservation lands. And it's simply because this sort of activity is very popular. There is a multi-million-dollar industry in Texas alone based off of the recreational pursuit of wild pigs, both day and night, 24/7. You can implement as many different gadgets and gear as you want. Unplugged shotguns, you can have large clips, you can go after them with suppressors and silencers. You can implement any kind of night vision or artificial lighting. You can even go after them from UTVs or vehicles as long as you're on private roadways only. In the state of Texas currently, as of 2021, you don't even need a hunting license to recreationally pursue wild pigs through sport hunting. And so it's a very popular deal. And I do believe that there's a lot of misconception about the effectiveness of this practice and when to utilize the tool of shooting, how to utilize it, and how to achieve the goal of directing animal movements by applying pressure to these animals to reduce damages, not necessarily numbers. Anytime we're wanting to reduce numbers, we're usually going to put the Winchester down. We're usually going to want to implement an aerial gunning regiment or a large-scale trapping operation to the extent to which that we can target and remove the total number of individuals that we're after. But when it comes down to intentionally wanting to benefit the landscape, intentionally wanting to benefit native species, habitat, to benefit water quality, and all of the myriad of impacts that wild pigs have, including the now $100 million annually in agricultural damages in Texas caused by wild pigs alone. I think it's time to start thinking about the right tool for the job. And for the most part, it's going to be intensive population reduction efforts such as trapping and aerial gunning, supplemented by techniques that are more aptly directed as tools of pressure to direct animal movements and reduce damages.